On May 8, 2020, for the third time, Ryan had already caused 2 traffic accidents. He blamed the nervous inhabitants of New Rome, who drove recklessly like monkeys out for his blood, making walking safer than driving. Thankfully, he had saved right before passing the Welcome to New Rome sign at the end of the highway connecting the city to the Campania region. Driving his highly customized red Plymouth Fury, Ryan stopped just before a tank truck nearly hit him from the left, dodged a bliss addict meth head, and finally reached New Rome Strip. Known as the largest metropolis in Italy and a ravaged Europe's capital of sin, New Rome was built around the shores of the Gulf of Naples years after Mecca's drones bombed it to oblivion. It featured the tallest buildings Ryan had seen since the Genome Wars, none surpassing the glass spire of Dynami's Tower north of town, symbolizing the company's power over the region. Corporate money had built New Rome, a city with no gods nor kings, only money. To the left of the driveway, Ryan glimpsed the pristine Mediterranean Sea glittering with the sunset, a distant island casting a long shadow on the horizon. To the right, he saw countless casinos, gambling dens, and luxury hostels that drew tourists. He even spotted the famous Colosseum Maximus, a modern replica of the old world's Colosseum. This district truly deserved its name, the Golden Coast. Ryan attracted a few glances from tourists as he drove in his Quicksave costume, which included a metal, mouthless mask with rounded glasses for eyes, black hair beneath a black top hat, a navy blue trench coat, a purple shirt, blue pants, black gloves, and boots. The outfit was hot and impractical for fighting but looked amazing, which was all that mattered to Quicksave. As he moved north toward his destination, Ryan noticed several eye-catching publicity boards. One portrayed the superheroine Wyvern, a beautiful Amazon with shoulder-length black hair, sharp grayish eyes, and a white bodysuit, flexing muscles with a green potion in the background. The ad promised strength like Wyvern's with the Hercules elixir, claiming it could achieve in an afternoon what Hercules did in 12 labors, costing 100,000 euros and available only at Dynami's. Ryan thought everyone wanted to be a genome these days, even a shadow of one, and although he had taken the real stuff, not a cheap knockoff, his life had been a roller coaster ever since. Driving past a cliff tourist spot and a Miami-like beach, Ryan reached a tourist district full of bars, nightclubs, and restaurants. The place smelled of drugs and alcohol but did not look seedy. The worst neighborhoods were reportedly in the north. Having memorized the city's map, Ryan quickly found an unremarkable pub located between an Italian restaurant and a closed nightclub. Parking nearby, he stepped down and opened his trunk. Ryan, never good at organizing, left all his belongings in chaotic disarray. Tools, computers, and weapons forming a mass of metal nearly overflowing from the car. None compared to his white rabbit plushie, the most devastating tool in his arsenal. After searching, he found the black briefcase he was hired to deliver, seized it, closed the trunk, and entered the pub. Inside the cozy place with 10 tables, only a third occupied, Ryan noticed a Latin muchacho trying to impress his date by levitating a coin, likely wasting $50,000 on a knockoff elixir. A balding, wrinkled old man with tan skin stood behind the counter, eyeing the newcomer suspiciously. Ryan greeted him, asking if this was Renesco's Jolie Wrangler. The man glared and replied that the name was on the front door, asking what Ryan wanted. Ryan noted the bar's title involved both French and English words, while the barman sounded Italian, a sign of multiculturalism. Ryan then handed the briefcase to the man, explaining it was full of mushrooms and a bomb, but he hadn't opened it this time. The barman frowned and asked if Ryan was implying something. Ryan introduced himself as Quicksave, Immortal, but requested secrecy. Someone at the back jeered that Ryan said it loud enough for everyone to hear, prompting laughter from the few clients. The barman asked if immortality was his power. Ryan replied it was part of a package deal. The barman grumbled, took the briefcase, and promised to inform his boss, assuring Ryan he would receive payment soon. Ryan placed a hand on the counter and asked if the barman had seen a girl named Len. Black hair, blue eyes, Marxist-Leninist. The barman shrugged, saying he never heard of her and suggested trying a brothel if Ryan was looking for a girl. Ryan replied that Len wasn't that type and guessed she was probably hiding in an underground Kremlin bunker. He then asked about places to buy custom genius tech, homemade. The barman advised Rust Town in the north if Ryan was brave enough, or the junkyard, though it was full of cutthroats and psychos nowadays. He looked Ryan over and warned that they would eat him alive. Ryan shrugged as the bar door opened and the temperature suddenly dropped. The room erupted in screams as projectiles shredded tables and clients alike. 3 times he had died trying to make this delivery. That was the consequence of not paying attention. Except for his save point, his powers required conscious activation, and his enhanced timing sense did not kick in until after living through events once already. Ryan had grown accustomed to dying after the first 24 times, but dying so soon, less than 2 hours after establishing a save point, 3 times in a row was frustrating. His loops usually lasted days, allowing him to attempt new and interesting stunts. Repeating the same events in quick succession bored him deeply. This situation meant war. He entered autopilot mode, his mind wandering while his body repeated the actions from his previous save. He only regained full consciousness upon reaching the bar. Instead of entering, Ryan stayed inside his car, waiting for his killer to appear. He moved his car in front of the pub, set an AC/DC song on the radio, and slammed the accelerator. Pedestrians screamed and scattered as the car crashed through the Wrangler's entrance. He had carefully positioned himself to avoid collateral damage, and thankfully no one was injured. The Spanish young man was too occupied holding his terrified girlfriend to confront Ryan. Satisfied he wouldn't have to reload again, Ryan stepped out and addressed the stunned patrons. He introduced himself as Quicksave, claiming immortality but urging them to keep it secret. The pistol gauntlets were too intimate, the Gauss rifle too quick, the shotgun tempting but overused, and the rabbit plushie too powerful. He settled on the baseball bat. Whistling, he played with the bat as he approached the assassin, who was rising to his feet, using the counter for support. The undead genome, despite his injuries, possessed enhanced physical abilities. The assassin hissed angrily, demanding Ryan's identity and questioning if he was an Augusti. Ryan replied that he was just a courier and asked for the assassin's name while he still had teeth. In response, the skeleton raised his hand and unleashed a volley of ice shards. Ryan lazily stopped time. The world went silent and purple, the icicles frozen midair. He recalled the pun for later. Ryan moved around the attack's path until he stood directly in front of the assassin. Neither the clients nor the enemy genome could move, trapped for 2 seconds. When time resumed, the skeleton kissed the aluminum bat intimately, losing a few teeth in the process. The attack knocked the killer to his knees, and another strike sent him face-first to the ground. Ryan began beating him to the tune of Highway to Hell, singing quietly. The enemy genome was too stunned to resist, and frozen blood beneath his bones and vestigial flesh made him vulnerable. Ryan remarked that he felt like the healthcare system, beating up a helpless granny, before continuing the assault. The wicked fossil offered no excuse, and Ryan pressed on, confident his resilience would allow him to survive worse. Suddenly, 3 men in black riot gear appeared behind Ryan, pointing energy rifles at him. They surrounded his car, proudly displaying the Ouroboros symbol of the Dynamis Corporation on their chests, likely private security. Ryan protested that he was just trying to help, waving his blood-stained bat in surrender after delivering a final kick to the assassin. One security guard asked Ryan if he had a license. Ryan shook his head and denied being a vigilante, Augusti, or company genome. When the guards threatened to take him into custody alongside the assassin, Ryan threw a bribe at them. The security captain chuckled, questioning if Ryan thought he could buy their honor, so Ryan threw a larger bribe. The captain accepted the money, lowered his rifle, and his men gently grabbed the assassin after punching him in the gut. Quicksave always delivered, no matter how many deaths it took. Ryan whispered that it wasn't about the money. He was just bored. Ryan always did science in his underwear. Clothes symbolized society's restrictions on the human spirit, the crushing force of civilization molding the individual. By remaining mostly naked, Ryan reconnected with his creativity, free from conformity. His boxers represented a lingering attachment to mental stability, preventing him from losing control. The one time Ryan had worked completely naked, he had built his rabbit plushie. His boxers felt comfortable and warm, made by Len years ago. After renting a hotel room near the city center, Ryan spent the early morning alternating between researching New Rome and improving his gadgets. The receptionist gave Quicksave a strange glance upon seeing him carry weapons upstairs, but did not alert private security. Masked strangers were common in the city. Ryan hacked the bedroom's camera to protect his secret identity and prevent panic, as he possessed many unsafe items. Resting on a chair, Ryan typed on his computer with his toes, a skill he had mastered over many loops, while working on his coil gun with his hands. The client had wired him payment for yesterday's delivery, complimenting him on Ghoul's arrest, though the courier cared little. The job was merely an excuse to travel across Italy seeking new adventures. He had paused his wandering upon hearing Len might be in New Rome. Corporations had concentrated industrial plants there, turning the area into a dumping ground, even building a wall to prevent vagrants from entering other districts. The receptionist mentioned the junkyard, an old coal mine turned landfill where rogue geniuses and adventurers exchanged goods. Perhaps Len was among them. Someone knocked on his bedroom window. Ryan glanced over to see a woman waving from outside. She asked if they could talk for a minute. Ryan's room was on the 10th floor without a fire exit. He grabbed his mask and hat, putting them on, and accused her of violating his secret identity. The woman raised an eyebrow, noting that Ryan had no secret identity and had never tried to hide it. Ryan expressed happiness upon hearing he had a file and asked how he was described. The woman said deranged but reliable, which pleased him. She eyed him through the glass and asked if he intended to put on other clothes. Ryan chuckled and declined. The woman knocked again with more frustration. Ryan rose to open the window with one hand, keeping his coil gun aimed at her with the other. He recognized her from a publicity board the day before. She hovered midair with translucent dragonfly wings flapping silently, hands on her waist, resembling a graceful fairy. She introduced herself as Wyvern, wearing a sleeveless, skin-tight white uniform with Dynami's D-shaped logo on the left and a silver star surrounded by golden laurel on the right. Likely in her mid-20s to early 30s, she was quite striking. She thanked Ryan for Ghoul's arrest the day before. Ryan replied casually and began to close the window. Wyvern caught the window and held it open, warning him not to close it. She asked what he was doing in town and if she could call him Quicksave. Ryan agreed and explained he was a courier delivering mail, regardless of how many wanted him dead. Wyvern asked if the Augusti had hired him as muscle since the place he defended was one of their fronts. Ryan said no. He had beaten the geriatric villain because he was in the way of completing his side quest. Wyvern showed confusion at his jargon, noting the genome wars had devastated the video game sector, leaving Ryan isolated. Wyvern then asked if he had heard of a girl named Len. Black hair, blue eyes, Marxist-Leninist. Ryan confirmed the description and explained he had been searching for her for a long time, praising her beauty and kindness. Wyvern admitted she had never heard of Len, but offered to check their files and help if she could. Wyvern revealed she belonged to Il Migliore, a group of corporate superheroes who were the official protectors of New Rome and modern celebrities, owned and directed by Dynamis. Ryan contrasted them with Leo Hargrave's Carnival, true pro bono superheroes he admired despite their causing his worst day. Wyvern said Il Migliore was always seeking new talents and acknowledged Ryan's reputation for collateral damage but noted his useful superpower and lack of association with criminals. Since he stopped Ghoul before a killing spree, she believed he had good intentions. Ryan joked about auditioning for a movie, as he had only tried theater once. Wyvern laughed bitterly, wishing they did fewer commercials and more arrests but insisted they did their best to protect citizens. She invited Ryan to visit their HQ to see if he fit with the organization, noting he would need support after his stunt with Ghoul. Ryan declined, insisting he could take care of himself. Wyvern warned him that the Meta were unreasonable psychos and that their boss, Adam, ate people. Ryan joked that Adam must have a lot on his plate. Wyvern's smile faded, and her wings slowed. Ryan said he would consider it if sidetracked from his main quest. Wyvern frowned, glanced sideways, and Ryan noticed an earplug in her left ear, though he heard nothing. She acknowledged his answer, handed him a business card, and told him to visit if he changed his mind. Ryan accepted the card, and Wyvern flew away. Her wings moved so fast they were invisible and silent except for the wind they produced. She vanished within a blink, accelerating north to near supersonic speed. The sound frequency of Wyvern's wings must have been inaudible to humans or governed by abnormal physics. The courier memorized that observation for later. Once alone, Ryan closed the window and returned to his task. No sooner had he sat back in his chair than his computer received a vocal communication demand. The genome immediately recognized the caller as the same person who had ordered the Renesco delivery. He lazily opened the vocal channel with his left toe and identified himself as Quicksave Deliveries, asking what he could do. An encrypted voice on the other end asked what the winged woman had told him. Ryan raised an eyebrow behind his mask and questioned whether he was being spied on. The voice replied that few places were off the grid in New Rome. Ryan made a mental note to find a more discreet hotel next loop and asked the caller's identity. The caller identified himself as Vulcan, representing the Augusti, the organization that ran things in New Rome and most of Italy. Ryan deadpanned that he had thought Dynamis ran things. Vulcan laughed and said that while that was the claim, Italy only had one emperor named Augustus. Ryan acknowledged the truth, recalling Augustus's invincibility and lightning powers. Vulcan thanked Ryan for saving their employee from the meta and offered more than what the winged lizard had promised. Ryan inquired whether it was an offer he couldn't refuse or just an offer, joking about his allergy to horses. Vulcan replied that they needed tough people who got things done and offered women or boys new hardware, good weapons, and enough bliss to fly to the moon, all contingent on proving himself a team player. Ryan asked how he could do that. An email notification popped up with an address. Ryan quickly checked it and identified the location as a casino called the Bakudo. Vulcan explained that they owned the establishment and instructed Ryan to come that night alone, warning not to make them wait as they never asked twice. Ryan ended the call, pondering the offers. He recognized that beating up one guy had suddenly made him a target for multiple groups. Either could help him find Len, and he had created a save point before coming to town, unlocking multiple routes. At the Bakudo, a Japan-themed casino, Ryan parked nearby and gazed up at the building, amazed by the perfect recreation of an oriental pagoda tower as large as a mall. A red carpet led to golden, ostentatious torii gates with the casino's title. Hordes of gamblers entered, some in traditional Asian clothes like qipao, others in tuxedos and gowns. Ryan noted that none were as stylish as Quicksave's own outfit but gave them points for trying. The staff had dressed the bouncers as samurai in low-grade, genius-made armor resembling feudal armor but heavier and bound by flexible circuits instead of fabric, with stained glass visors. Ryan wondered if they had lightsabers. One bouncer informed Ryan that no weapons were allowed inside as he and another checked him. Both, taller due to their armor, immediately found the throwing knives hidden in Ryan's sleeves and examined him thoroughly. They took a few minutes to find most of his weapons. The bouncer listed 25 throwing knives, 2 revolvers including a Desert Eagle, 1 energy pistol, 1 frag grenade, a switchblade, a hand buzzer, and seized a tiny metal sphere the size of a baseball, asking if it was a bomb. Ryan confirmed it was genius tech, thermonuclear, not EMP or gunpowder. The bouncer chuckled until realizing Ryan was serious, then exchanged a glance with his fellow guard. All placed their hands on sabers around their belts. The guard asked if Ryan kept an A-bomb in his back pocket, wagging the device at his face. Ryan promised it was only for dissuasion, crossing his fingers and swearing. The bouncer remained silent a moment, then touched his helmet and hushed words Ryan couldn't hear, presumably contacting his manager. Ryan acknowledged and waltzed into the casino. Inside, Ryan walked through a corridor of pachinko machines where gamblers toiled, enslaved by their otherworldly power, reminding him of the 4 loops he had spent addicted to them before getting bored. A few steps later, Ryan entered the main gambling hall, which mixed Japanese art design and Western gambling entertainment. Roulette wheels stood beside blackjack tables, and an arena for sumo wrestling sat next to a sushi bar. An elevator at the center led to higher floors catering to different tastes. A giant screen above the sushi bar displayed a promotional image of New Rome's Colosseum with a roaring T-Rex under the crowd's acclaim. A voiceover hyped the competition, announcing a mutant dinosaur cloned from ancient times and improved to fight at Colosseum Maximus, followed by a humanoid mecha called the Megafighter Mark III introduced by Dynami's weapon development program, designed to fight the deadliest psychos and marauders. The screen asked if any contestant would get the better of these bloodthirsty monsters, promising to show it in tonight's episode of Colosseum Maximus, only at Dynami's. Ryan noticed a smaller screen showing betting odds, with most people wagering on an overwhelming dinosaur victory. He wandered toward the roulette near the sushi bar and began placing bets, throwing stacks of euro bills on the table. Ryan feigned innocence and denied having precognition, claiming to be as violent as they come. Ryan countered by asking if he could rewind time and erase the conversation so it never happened, questioning whether the man even existed or was a simulation of his feverish mind. The samurai guy chose to watch, trying to make sense of the existential conundrum Quicksave had just presented. In the end, the courier spent $30,000 but memorized the roulette numbers and the victorious gladiators' names for a later loop. Strangely, while the dinosaur won, one firecracker survived all the way to the end. The samurai guy, who had acted as Ryan's chaperone during the gambling spree, told him he definitely wasn't a seer and advised him to slow down since he was burning money. Ryan asked the mysterious samurai overseer his name. The man replied he was Zanbato, an Augusti. When Ryan asked if he was Japanese because of his name, Zanbato said no and explained he was Italian. Ryan remarked that having a supervillain name but not being Japanese made him a counterfeit. Zanbato protested that he was not a supervillain and mentioned his girlfriend was Korean. Ryan gasped in surprise and expressed delight at the news. Zanbato smiled and said he hoped to marry her soon, then asked why Ryan had come to them, noting that Wyvern had also made an offer. Ryan responded bluntly that they had won the coin toss. Zanbato chuckled and put a hand on Ryan's shoulder, inviting him to a drink. At the sushi bar, Zanbato took a beer while Ryan ordered tea, and bouncers formed a security perimeter around them for privacy. Zanbato informed Ryan that Ghoul had escaped, likely busted out by his pals with inside help from a mole in private security, and warned that Ghoul would soon be on Ryan's trail. Ryan promised to inform Wyvern about the breakout and expressed surprise at private security's corruption. Zanbato explained that underpaid grunts were open to negotiation, though elite squads working for Dynami's executives were not, and commended Ryan for approaching them, emphasizing safety in numbers. Ryan revealed he was immortal but had never told anyone. Zanbato raised an eyebrow, asking if Ryan could not die. Ryan said he thought he could die but had never succeeded. Zanbato acknowledged Ryan's ability to stop time for unknown durations as his main power and asked what Ryan knew about them. Ryan said they were the biggest supervillain organization in Italy and that their boss was invincible. Zanbato sighed and corrected him, saying they were a family and profit-minded society of men and women of honor, not supervillains, and that Il Migli or labeled them as such because they weren't corporate sellouts and built houses, churches, and hospitals for the poor. Zanbato replied that their activities weren't illegal since there was no true government and that they funded themselves to maintain peace and safety in their territory, promising that when Augustus took over Italy, it would be like before the wars. Ryan asked if they had anything child-related, warning that if they did anything reprehensible to teens or below, there would be a problem. Zanbato showed absolute disgust and said they didn't even sell bliss to minors, insisting they weren't savages like the meta. He then asked if Ryan knew how their organization worked, emphasizing that joining would require bending to the hierarchy. Ryan said he was more of a free spirit and was just looking for help finding a friend. Zanbato seemed surprised and asked whom. Ryan described her as Len, with black hair, blue eyes, and a Marxist-Leninist. Ryan shook his head when asked if he had a photo and clarified she was his best friend, not his girlfriend, and that he had been searching for her for years after a client tried to pay him with tech she made, claiming it came from New Rome. Zanbato finished his beer and considered the information, then offered help to find Len in exchange for a favor. Ryan agreed, knowing he could start a new loop and go to Len directly once he had the information. Zanbato explained they needed muscle because New Rome had a new problem called the Metagang, all psychos. Ryan said he knew them and had a skirmish with them years ago when they were small fries. Zanbato described how these junkies had started moving into their turf recently, especially in the north neighborhoods. Zanbato said they could, but for now, the bosses wanted their best men focused on more important matters and asked Ryan if he would help beat up some mutants to get his girl. It was May 10, 2020, and Ryan had not caused destruction yet, which surprised him since 72 hours was almost a hard cap for non-destructive behavior. He usually got into exciting situations drawn to adventure. Driving at night up north, the courier and his Plymouth left the wealthy districts for more industrial ones, with hotels and casinos replaced by railroad stations, gray buildings, taxi centrals, and other businesses. Nearing the old harbor according to the map, Zanbato remarked that existence was subjective in response to Ryan's question about whether he existed if time could be rolled back. Ryan turned to him, lowering himself to avoid hitting the car roof. Zanbato explained that they could never know they existed, so there was no objective truth to existence. Ryan asked if Zanbato was still thinking it over, noting he said so much nonsense that people usually forgot halfway through. Zanbato admitted it was disturbing. Ryan said one got used to the uncertainty and decided not to tell him the truth. The city's old harbor appeared derelict, with rusting buildings standing beside abandoned waterfront warehouses. A massive supertanker lay wrecked on the stony beach, its captain likely drunk during the crash. Ryan noticed no signs of human life nearby. They had entered the poor zone. The air quality declined sharply, the stench overwhelming even the sea breeze. Ryan blamed the nearby nuclear power plant, industrial facilities, and Rust Town to the north. He muttered a complaint about Greenpeace, hoping someone was still alive to care. Zanbato explained that Dynamis used knockoff genomes to contain pollution in Rust Town but neglected this area as they drove toward the beach. Ryan inquired if this was what remained of Naples' old port. Zanbato confirmed and pointed out new docks under construction to the south for freighters, suggesting they could stop there. The rest were armed grunts with submachine guns, cannon fodder Ryan recognized instantly, whom he nicknamed Grunt 1, Grunt 2, and Grunty. Grunty explained it was video game stuff and the others shrugged. Ryan lamented being an island of culture in a sea of ignorance. Ryan asked about Il Migliore and whether superheroes could be bought. Zanbato explained the mutual non-interference arrangement resembled a Cold War, but cautioned that Meta had already attacked delivery runs near Rust Town. Ryan opened his car trunk to retrieve his pisto gauntlets, metallic gloves equipped with hydraulic rams and electrical shocks, improved from the original design by Genius Mecron. The water near the pier grew agitated as 3 spherical bathyspheres surfaced, each large enough to hold many people. The machines had no cables and appeared powered by small propellers. Their reinforced glass doors opened, but no controls were visible inside. Ryan confirmed his suspicion by noting the fondness for outdated steampunk technology made viable again, the rugged design prioritizing efficiency over beauty, and the dulled crimson paint, Len's favorite color. The sight stirred old emotions in Ryan: nostalgia, joy, longing, and hope. After years of searching, Ryan realized he was finally on the right track. His days of solitude were nearing an end. He understood this mission would advance his main quest. Ryan turned to Zanbato, pleading to know where they had found the bathyspheres. Zanbato replied he did not know. Vulcan's division handled the technology, while theirs only managed transport and supplies. Zanbato sensed it too and immediately readied a swirling sword of solid crimson light, a perfect katana replica, announcing that their enemies had arrived. The grunts raised their machine guns as Ryan spotted figures approaching from the north. A distant figure froze the sea, creating an ice bridge to skate on. Ryan recognized Ghoul, who wore multi-layered ice armor instead of his usual hoodie, his body emitting a white mist that obscured his features. Zanbato identified them as Ghoul and Saren, possibly more. Ryan declared he would handle them alone and told Zanbato to continue with the manual labor. Zanbato expressed concern, warning they were killers, but Ryan confidently headed north toward the stony beach and supertanker, nearly slipping on oiled stones before steadying himself. The two psychos targeted the pier and bathyspheres, likely forewarned. Ghoul noticed Ryan, who mimicked swinging an invisible bat. Like a bull challenging a matador, Ghoul veered off course and charged at Ryan with murderous intent. Ghoul screamed insults over the sea while forming a dozen ice shards from moisture around him, threatening to harm Ryan. Ryan quipped about Ghoul regrowing his teeth from drinking milk. Ghoul leapt onto the beach, launching a dozen ice daggers simultaneously at Ryan, who accepted the challenge. Ryan stopped time, retrieved knives hidden under his trench coat, aimed, and threw them. When time resumed, Ryan's knives deflected most of Ghoul's ice shards, which mostly struck a warehouse behind, while one knife pierced Ghoul's unprotected eye. Ghoul snarled, accusing Ryan of beating him up and calling him an Auguste. Ghoul skated after Ryan at high speed with blades raised. Ryan dodged by lowering his head, aware his time-stop ability could last up to 10 seconds but required a cooldown equal to the freeze duration. Ghoul repeatedly attacked, but Ryan punched him in the stomach, activating Fisty, which smashed through Ghoul's ice armor and sent him flying into the sea, where the water froze upon contact. Unfortunately, Ghoul's white mist froze Fisty's pistons, jamming the weapon. Ryan stopped time again and ran toward the part of the walkway that hadn't frozen. Running on ice proved difficult and made him look clumsy. Quicksave shouted an innocent taunt about his invitation, leaving her stone cold while running away and unjamming Fisty. The sustained blast collapsed the walkway behind him, stones falling onto the beach. Ryan was surprised they hadn't woken the whole neighborhood. Ghoul snarled angrily, demanding that Ryan stop talking as the drenched psycho leapt onto the walkway for a second round. Despite his armor of ice, he left salt water behind with every step, and Ryan noticed a starfish stuck to Ghoul's leg. Ryan turned to face his foes, extending his arms and attempting to look fabulous. He declared he wouldn't take them seriously, referencing Bugs Bunny, his favorite character. Ghoul's fury grew, creating a white mist that made it difficult to see him. The harbor was slowly freezing as the psycho threw car-sized blocks of ice at Ryan. Ryan stopped time lazily, dodged a projectile, then canceled his power. Ghoul's aim worsened with his anger, but the mist prevented Ryan from closing in without freezing. Ghoul threatened that soon Ryan would be blood on the pavement, though the waterfront was now an icy wasteland of snow and craters. Ryan pointed out that ice and air blasts were household products, while he controlled the linchpin of all reality. Ghoul unleashed a wide burst of white mist, freezing everything in its path. Ryan taunted Ghoul, claiming his costume and bloody bat made Ghoul fall for him, but he didn't see Ghoul that way. Ghoul threatened to retaliate if Ryan cracked another joke, and Ryan responded with a pun about giving him the cold shoulder. Ghoul exploded in fury as white mist swirled around him, forming layers of stalagmites. When the mist dissipated, Ghoul was replaced by a 4-meter-tall titan of ice and snow, a fusion between a snowman and a hedgehog with mace-like hands and ice spikes for defense. Ryan barely leapt aside as the giant attempted to squash him, shattering concrete and shaking the ground. A rumbling noise echoed across the parking lot as Zanbato entered, manifesting a sword of crimson light. He announced that security was coming. Ryan asked if they had paid them off, and Zanbato explained they paid them to ignore a delivery run, not the harbor's destruction. Zanbato switched his attack to Ghoul, moving at great speeds despite the heavy armor. He sliced through the giant snowman's leg, which quickly reattached. Zanbato stepped back to avoid freezing mist and continued hacking at the giant, annoying Ghoul enough to abandon pursuing Ryan and attack Zanbato instead. An attack helicopter flew above the parking lot, a customized Augusta A-129 Mangusta piloted by 2 security guards. Ryan waved a pile of banknotes as a sign of friendship, but they responded with a missile. Ryan stopped time briefly to move out of the missile's path, thankful they didn't use laser weapons. Zanbato shielded his face and avoided being knocked back, his armor deflecting debris. Ghoul's snowman form absorbed the projectile without discomfort. Time resumed, and the giant snowman absorbed a full sustained blast of compressed air head-on. The ice construct exploded into droplets and shards, and Ghoul hit the ground face first. Zanbato quickly cut Ghoul in half execution style, while the helicopter crashed on the frozen beach further west. Ryan dodged by leaping to the side as gas escaped through the holes in her mask, propelling Hazmat Girl like a balloon toward the horizon at full speed. She continued until crashing into the distant supertanker's wreck. Ryan glanced at Fisty, grimacing as the gas rusted its pistons into scrap within seconds. He could have ended it sooner by gutting them during stop time, but he believed life was about having fun. Zanbato asked if she was dead upon reaching Quicksave. Ryan shrugged, uncertain, then realized he couldn't see Ghoul among the snowman's remains. Zanbato explained that Ghoul's other power was immortality. He never died even when missing vital organs. Ryan gasped in shock. Zanbato added that Ghoul wouldn't enjoy it much, since he had cut him into more pieces than a birthday cake and tossed his head into the sea. Luigi's team had already left, and they needed to escape before more security guards arrived. Zanbato asked if Ryan could give him a lift. Ryan agreed, whistling as he heard his self-driven Plymouth Fury circle the battlefield to reach them. Zanbato expressed surprise that Ryan's car could move by itself. Ryan confided that he didn't have a driver's license. The duo left the ruined harbor, nearly crossing paths with 3 private security armored minivans. Before leaving, Ryan glanced at the destroyed helicopter's remains sunk into the sea and hoped the guards were okay. They were just doing their job, albeit zealously, and if they had died, Ryan considered creating a new loop to save their lives. Zanbato pointed to a railroad station corner and asked to be dropped off, saying his girlfriend would pick him up. Ryan expressed surprise and Zanbato promised to introduce them one day, confident they would get along due to a shared sense of humor. Ryan boasted about his inimitable sense of humor, and Zanbato chuckled, stepping out of the car as 2 drunk men passed by. Zanbato offered to ask Vulcan about the girlfriend's submarine tech, promising to solve that mystery quickly. Ryan appreciated the offer and asked if he could call him Zan or Zani. Zanbato introduced himself as Jamie and shook Ryan's hand before leaving. Ryan watched him go with a feeling of contentment, pleased that not only had he found a lead toward Len, but also made a new friend, a friendly mobster fellow. This connection locked him onto the Augusti path, and a few more missions would provide the critical information to find his best friend. But that would wait until after a night of good sleep. He would have to repair Fisty in the morning, as dodging attacks all night had exhausted him. An hour later, Ryan reached his hotel room door, ready to collapse on the bed. His hand touched the doorknob, feeling slight resistance against his push. Click. Before Ryan could react, the floor exploded in gas and fire. It was May 8, 2020, for the 5th time, so Ryan stopped his Plymouth Fury in the middle of the road. Motorists honked angrily, threatening him to move, but Ryan ignored them, meditating on what had happened before deciding to change hotels. He promised to drive back to Renesco, deeming the city unsafe. He wondered if inns were insured against terrorist attacks. To keep the routine consistent, Ryan repeated his previous actions. Arriving at Renesco's place, waiting for Ghoul to get in, then smashing the psycho with his Plymouth from behind. However, as he opened the trunk to grab his baseball bat and finish the job, Ryan felt a pang of guilt. Could he live with such laziness, beating an old bag of bones the same way repeatedly? Couldn't he give this moment more dignity and uniqueness? For novelty, Ryan grabbed his shotgun instead. He approached Ghoul and shot him in the left knee before the undead could react. Ghoul nearly collapsed but managed to hang onto the counter. Ryan asked if he was all right, noting he didn't look well. Ghoul snarled in surprise and anger, accusing Ryan of shooting him in the leg. Ryan asked if he needed to go to the hospital, reloading the shotgun. Before Ghoul could answer, Ryan shot him in the other knee, causing him to collapse screaming. Ghoul cursed Ryan, who replied that now he was going to the hospital. Ryan sensed this routine would repeat often. After shooting Ghoul everywhere it mattered, and some places it didn't, Ryan paid off Renesco and the private security, then diverged from the previous loop. Having learned his lesson, Ryan chose another hotel, away from tourist areas where he hoped his room wouldn't be firebombed. He drove south toward the plebeian district, where the architecture changed from casinos and nightclubs to three-story apartment buildings clustered together with narrow alleys. Small markets and cafes emitted tantalizing food aromas. Eventually, Ryan reached the Arab district, recognized by billboards mostly in Arabic and Turkish with some Spanish. Locals called it Little Maghrib. He drove past a perfect replica of the Synagogue of Turin. He had visited the original in an irradiated city wearing a hazmat suit, standing next to a mosque. Both buildings were slightly derelict, showing how little Dynamis and other corporations cared about maintaining religious sites. However, the site that caught Ryan's attention was a hill to the south, apparently the city's highest natural point. Atop it stood an enormous estate, roughly the size of the Vatican, with architecture clearly inspired by antiquity. The estate included a sprawling multi-floor Roman villa, fountains, a private park, and a smaller replica of the Greek Parthenon. Whoever lived there clearly had a god complex. Ryan wondered why the obsession with marble columns persisted and why no obelisks had been added for variety. Strangely, nothing was built around the estate for kilometers, and only one road led to the summit. The hill was surrounded by a fortified fence and guarded by security forces. Ryan suspected who inhabited those halls and decided to keep his distance. There were a few people Ryan dared not test his immortality against, at least not yet, especially now that he had a lead on Len after so many years. Ryan's hotel was much dirtier than the previous one. The owner had replaced security cameras with cockroaches in the walls, and Ryan's bed smelled of bliss, the popular mushroom drug. A male voice answered, but Ryan glanced at the graffiti and ended the call without a word, chuckling to himself. Some things never changed. The next morning, Ryan conducted science experiments in his underwear, focusing on reinforcing Fisty to prevent the ice trick that allowed Ghoul to jam it during their last encounter. The courier couldn't afford his weapons underperforming against an old bone yeller. He also researched Dynanet for sightings of submarines and bathyspheres in the local Gulf but found nothing. He learned that the old island of Ischia, visible while driving along the coast, was a toxic ruin since Mechren bombed Italy back to the Stone Age. Unlike other areas, corporations never renovated it. Ryan suspected the Augusti sent crates there, and that the use of genius-made submarines rather than boats had a reason, perhaps to supply the island. He couldn't prove it but had a good feeling. A knock on his window interrupted his research, revealing a familiar winged heroine. Ryan replayed the same conversation as before, this time on the 3rd floor instead of the 10th. Wyvern appeared more nervous, possibly due to proximity to the mountain estate. Ryan noticed the locals had emptied the street below his bedroom when Wyvern arrived. They clearly disliked Il Migli or in this area. Wyvern confirmed that the meta planned to break out Ghoul today with the complicity of corrupt private security guards. When Ryan asked how she knew, she refused to reveal her source. She added that even if Ghoul was broken out, he wouldn't get far. Medics said he had more bullets than intact bones. Then she focused on her earplug and announced that the meta were ambushing Ghoul's transport convoy in broad daylight. Ryan realized that was why she had left in a hurry earlier. She hadn't been fast enough last loop, but maybe this time would be different. Before Wyvern flew off, Ryan asked about the name of the Roman-themed estate on the hill. She said it was officially called Hillside but unofficially known as Mount Augustus. Ryan noted the blatant plagiarism of Mount Olympus, renamed after its owner more like Mount Narcissus. Wyvern gave Ryan a business card and told him to take care before vanishing at high speed. Ryan wondered if she would succeed this time. Despite the divergence, Ryan knew he only had to wait for Vulcan's call to get everything back on track. Being close to Augusti territory, he expected contact soon. The call did not come. Suddenly, a distant explosion startled Ryan. He opened the window and saw a pillar of smoke rising toward the sky in the direction Wyvern had flown. Vulcan had not called him all day. Disturbed, Ryan went to the Bakudo casino that night, but the guards refused him entry when he arrived in costume. Ryan returned unmasked and in civilian clothes, wearing a classy red tie. This time, the guards mistook him for a normal client and let him in. He approached a card croupier playing blackjack with a well-dressed group of professional gamblers and asked if he had seen Zanbato. The croupier frowned and said Zanbato was not there that night. Ryan asked about his plumber friend Luigi. The dealer shrugged, saying he hadn't seen him either, but offered to deliver a message if he spotted them. Ryan whispered a coded phrase into the dealer's ear. "The orange is in the henhouse." He explained it was a code and their lives depended on it. The dealer nodded seriously. Despite this, Ryan realized things had gone off the rails. Shooting Ghoul, switching hotels, warning Wyvern about Ghoul's escape. Something had caused him to fall off the Augusti's radar or shifted their priorities, just as he found a lead on Len. Ryan stayed at the casino playing for hours. Knowing the outcome of every game, he accumulated a nice sum at roulette and Coliseum bets, careful never to overplay. With lifetimes of cheating experience, he mastered the art of appearing as a professional gambler, sacrificing money when necessary, discussing complex probability theories with other players, and faking tension while waiting for results. He played poker and blackjack legitimately, not using his time stop to peek at rivals' hands. The best defense against anti-seer methods was banality. Seers were rare and obvious, always trying to win big. Skilled gamblers and talented amateurs were numerous. Ryan only had to convince the guards he belonged to the latter, winning believable amounts, and it worked. Although Ryan usually enjoyed such tricks, his mind was elsewhere. He questioned whether to attend the supply run at the harbor without an invitation to get back on the Augusti path, but he wasn't sure if it would happen now. He also wondered who had killed him in the last loop. The meta were the obvious suspects, but it could have been an unrelated hit. Since Ryan had taken a job for the Augusti after denying Wyvern, Dynamis might have ordered his death. The easiest solution was to reload and deviate after receiving the Augusti mission, but Ryan needed to die first. Car crashes were too common. Traffic had killed him almost as often as enemy genomes. A bullet to the head had failed before. He had woken 6 months later after miraculous surgery. A stunning woman with long black hair, a crimson gown, and a beauty spot on her right cheek took a seat next to Ryan at the table, playing with a glass of alcohol to get his attention. She remarked that it was the first time she had seen him around. Ryan found it strange how everyone wanted to befriend him once he started making money, but he said he was thinking about something else. The woman suggested jumping into MT Vesuvius, but Ryan said he had already tried something similar with Etna. Raised his hand to order an electric fan. The waiter looked confused until Ryan gave him a €300 tip. 1 minute later, Ryan had his fan. He piled thousands of euros in banknotes in front of it, aiming for the center of the casino. The woman likely guessed his plan from the flash of recognition in her eyes. Ryan switched on the fan, sending bills flying all over the casino, shouting to the fastest, as greed flashed in everyone's eyes. When Ryan exited the Bakudo, locals, including the woman, fought over the bills, with even bouncers and staff trying to grab some. Ignoring the chaos, Ryan glanced at Wyvern's business card and the Dynamis logo on its back, wondering if he should check them out. He decided no, as Len was his priority. He was tired of loneliness and wanted to find her at all costs. The Augusti had already provided hints. Ryan knew people used her genius technology and traded such devices in Rusttown. If the Augusti path was closed to him this loop, driving north, Ryan saw the fortifications separating Rusttown from the rest of New Rome. The barriers were tall steel cylinders, wired fences, mounted cameras, and surveillance systems. Trained genomes in watchtowers pushed pollution away from tourist areas into Rusttown using minor aerokinesis granted by a knockoff elixir called Tempest. As he searched for an entrance, Ryan listened to Dynami's radio. The news confirmed the explosion in Little Maghreb was the result of a duel between Wyvern and the criminal genome known as Vulcan, formerly Urban Gorilla, who had briefly served as Wyvern's sidekick before joining the Augusti. Vulcan was forced to flee after causing great collateral damage. Ryan realized Little Maghreb was probably close to the Augusti's hideout, and Vulcan had ambushed Wyvern, likely inflicting heavy wounds and falling off their radar afterward. He decided to stay in his first hotel until Wyvern contacted him, then switch places to avoid the assassination attempt that ended the last loop. The radio continued, reporting that the cryokinetic psycho known as Ghoul had attempted to escape private security, but was quickly recaptured by Il Migliore. Ryan reached a border checkpoint guarded by 3 private security guards in riot gear with laser rifles. The chief signaled him to stop. Ryan tried to look innocent despite his mask and full Quicksave attire. The guard ordered him to halt, stating no entry without proper authorization or work permit. Ryan said he was just visiting because he heard they had a zoo. The guard grumbled that it was a zoo, explaining the frontier was the untamed urban wilderness and they were the only ones standing between New Rome and barbarians who would tear it down. Ryan sarcastically said he feared for civilization when he saw the guards, but the man missed the sarcasm. The guard said that to pass with proper authorization, Ryan would have to contribute to the community's mutual defense. Ryan asked if they would check his car for drugs or weapons, swearing he was clean. The guard replied it depended on how much he contributed. Ryan understood why the Augusti and Meta could get in and out easily. The guard's corruption was obvious, and surprise inspections were rare. Once past the checkpoint, Ryan noticed the air quality drop drastically, worse than the harbor, with a pervasive smell of rust and chemicals. He raised his car windows and activated his mask's air filter. Houses and 3-floor apartment buildings were in disrepair, with broken windows, graffiti-covered cinder-block walls, and crumbling structures. Narrow streets formed a claustrophobic labyrinth of alleys too small for his car, with fire escapes casting shadows despite daylight. Streetlights barely worked, and thick smog colored the world sickly yellow. Every piece of metal seemed to rust, likely due to pollution. Ryan observed squatters overtaking everything, dealers openly selling bliss to homeless people, and locals avoiding his gaze, all wearing scarves, face masks. He drove past a corpse left to rot in muddy waters near an overflowing sewer entrance, with a pack of wild dogs waiting nearby, perhaps waiting for him to leave before feeding. Though Ryan had made jokes about everything before, he could not muster the energy for humor today. Seeing a dealer who did not avert his gaze, Ryan lowered his window and asked where he could find genius-made tech. The local directed him to a place called Polly's shop but tried to sell Ryan a gram of bliss at an outrageous price, indicating that prices had risen since the meta affected the local dealer's suppliers. Ryan found Polly's shop easily due to its garish neon sign, though it was located in a narrow, dead-end alley. He parked his car in front of the door, grabbed his coil gun for precaution, and entered without knocking, shouting, "Here's Johnny!" Inside, the shop resembled a disorganized garage cluttered with junk, poorly ventilated and dimly lit by sparse bulbs. Scavenged car parts hung from the ceiling. Behind the counter stood a scrawny, balding man in his 40s, half French, half British, an appearance Ryan recognized. The shopkeeper immediately raised a rocket launcher at Ryan, likely scavenged genius tech. Polly's eyes flashed with recognition behind his goggles as he exclaimed, "You? It's you!" Ryan responded with enthusiasm, joking that he had become famous enough to be recognized. Polly, aiming the weapon at Ryan's face, called him a maniac who had destroyed his old workshop in Otranto. Ryan, confused, asked when that had happened. Polly explained that 2 years earlier, Ryan had crashed a plane into his workshop and delivered a letter, claiming he wanted to make an unforgettable entrance. Ryan shrugged, unsure if he remembered, and Polly expressed disbelief at Ryan's lack of memory. Realizing Polly had taken the incident personally, Ryan apologized and offered to compensate him. Polly, grinding his teeth, refused the money and ordered Ryan to leave before he pulled the trigger. Ryan warned that he could stop time, but Polly countered that the weapon was a facehugger missile that would relentlessly pursue its target once locked. Despite the tense start, Ryan lowered his coil gun and searched his coat, ignoring Polly's weapon. He produced a white rabbit plushie, which drained the color from Polly's face. Ryan threatened to activate the plushie's hidden function if Polly did not lower his weapon. Polly, shaking, dropped the launcher, cursing how Ryan could do that to such an adorable toy. Ryan explained he was looking for homemade genius tech. Polly laughed, claiming he could not help since the junkyard was closed and no one was selling anything. Ryan clarified he was not looking to buy but sought a specific technology. Bathyspheres used for supply runs in water, with crimson paint and steampunk influence. Polly asked if he meant lens tech. Ryan's quick movement startled Polly as Ryan closed the distance swiftly. Ryan asked if Polly wanted to be his friend, but Polly bluntly declined. Ryan then demanded Polly tell him everything. Polly sighed and described a black-haired, blue-eyed, somewhat crazy girl who arrived in Rusttown 6 months ago, calling herself the Underdiver. She was one of the geniuses trying to operate independently of powerful groups like Dynamis or Augustus. There had been a black market for such genomes, but it had dwindled. Polly recounted that the Underdiver fashioned armor from scavenged materials resembling an old-world gym diving suit and frequently asked Polly for parts to maintain it. When Ryan asked if it had a minigun, Polly was surprised by his knowledge. Ryan encouraged him to continue. Polly explained that the Underdiver sold some inventions to the Augusti to make ends meet and was passionate. She had attacked a chemical plant owned by Dynamis in protest of working conditions. Polly said the private security attacked her workshop and captured her, though rumors suggested the Augusti had broken her out. Since then, she had vanished. Ryan considered that the Augusti were likely the best way to find Len, but the private security's capture implied they had a file on her. This was more information than he had ever gathered, putting him in an unusually good mood. On a whim, Ryan offered to grant Polly a wish for the information. Polly scoffed, doubting Ryan's sincerity, but after a pause, asked if Ryan was serious. Ryan affirmed he would fulfill any wish, no matter how many tries. Polly, seeing no downside, mentioned a psycho gang called the Metagang that had recently moved into Rusttown. Polly explained that the Metagang had taken over the junkyard, where most exchanges occurred, worsening conditions daily. They killed genomes to drain their blood and abducted normies from the streets, never to be seen again. Polly clenched his teeth and added that even children had gone missing. A chill ran down Ryan's spine, hardening his heart. He had told Zanbato that kids were sacred to him, especially since he related to them better than adults and had endured a difficult childhood himself. Ryan asked Polly if the private security knew about the Metagang's actions. Polly replied that they knew but didn't care. Private security zealously protected key infrastructure like the power plant and water treatment station, but the rest of the area was left to frontier guards who ignored what happened within the walls. As the psychos were effectively cleaning out the city's trash, Ryan inquired about Wyvern and Il Miglior. Polly admitted that Wyvern occasionally fought a lone meta, but she was the only one who cared and couldn't be everywhere. Until the meta killed too many workers, assaulted tourists, or stole an elixir shipment, Dynamis wouldn't intervene. Ryan interrupted, noting the meta had been there for days without attacking Dynamis' elixir shipments or genomes. Polly shook his head. Ryan found this odd, as psychos usually caused chaos trying to get knockoff elixirs, escalating conflicts with locals and going on rampages. He knew this pattern well, having lived with one. These psychos were unusually restrained. From what he had heard, the meta hadn't attacked Dynamis' infrastructure. They only tried to drive the Augusti out of Rusttown. Ryan deduced that Dynamis ignored the area unless its buildings or agents were attacked. He had initially thought the Metagang came to New Rome to fuel their addiction, but something else was at work. Despite this, Ryan's priority remained Len. He promised Polly he would fulfill his wish during his perfect run. When Polly asked about the perfect run, Ryan explained it was a concept he developed during his endless wandering. Gathering every piece of information about a place and its inhabitants through loops, then dedicating the last loop to creating the perfect chain of events to guarantee the best outcome by his standards. Only then would he create a new save point and move on. After learning the way to the junkyard from Polly, Ryan left the shop and prepared to drive straight into the meta's nest. Suddenly, a bug landed on his Plymouth. Then an enormous 3-meter-tall monster crashed onto his car, crushing the roof, destroying the window, and shattering the engine. The creature resembled a twisted fusion between a human and a mosquito, with a black exoskeleton and crimson flesh beneath. Its eyes fixed on Quicksave with hunger, claws raised. The mosquito rasped that it had smelled a rat sneaking in. Ryan screamed in horror over his car's destruction, startling the psycho. He immediately stopped time, rushed to his Plymouth Fury, and checked its health. The damage was too extensive to save it. Overwhelmed with fury, Ryan considered going on a Kill Bill rampage against the mosquito and every psycho he could find, to show them the terror of hell unending. A curse straight out of Tartarus. But he couldn't bear living without his beloved Plymouth. With a depressed sigh, Ryan grabbed a small metal sphere from his coat and let time resume. He raised the sphere at the psycho, warning him. The mosquito asked if it was a ball, but Ryan explained it was an A-bomb and tossed it. The psycho caught it with sharp reflexes, looked at the weapon, then back at Ryan, confused and horrified. Ryan declared that nobody touched his car. Ryan felt satisfied, finally trying a new method he had never attempted before. More than a decade later, it had become an open grave, a poisonous marsh with canals overflowing with toxic plants and dark mud. Some islands had sunk after Mecran's drone bombardments destroyed their supports. Most houses had fallen into disrepair, invaded by worms and insects, their rooms filled with old human bones. The city's outskirts had been taken over by raiders who used boats to attack coastal communities. Until yesterday, when Ryan's group arrived. Len's father had dragged them there from Rubano upon hearing that local raiders included genomes. The maniac couldn't resist easy targets, leaving the rest of the group to salvage while he hunted. Nobody could defeat Len's dad, except perhaps Augustus or Leo Hargraves, though they had not yet met. With his face covered by a scarf to protect against the foul air, Ryan pushed away dark thoughts and glanced at a stone house in front of him. Dusty, half-rotten books were piled in its courtyard, forming a strange staircase to climb above the nearby walls. Len called to him from inside, excited about a treasure she had found. Curious, the 16-year-old stepped inside whistling. The house was a library unlike any Ryan had seen before. Piled-up books formed a labyrinth of walls and twisting turns, capable of crushing him if they collapsed. Unlike other areas, vegetation hadn't taken over, and marauders had ignored the building. Culture was no longer respected. Ryan found Len lying on a boat inside the library, reading. The owners had moved a gondola inside before filling it with books. Ryan teased Len, calling her Shorty. Knowing she disliked the nickname, she protested that she was growing and threatened to throw a dictionary at him. Ryan lay next to Len, their shoulders touching, and peeked at the book's cover. Though ancient and yellowed by age, it was relatively well preserved. Ryan recognized it as Vingt Mille Lieues sous les Mers, written by Jules Verne. Len translated the title as 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, French edition, her eyes shining with excitement. She already had 2 copies but none in the original language. Ryan mocked her, doubting she could read French, and Len pinched his arm in response. Len told Ryan he deserved the book, adding in broken French that she was learning the language. Ryan corrected her pronunciation and suggested she drop the unnecessary bien. She sighed and told him to just take a book and be quiet, mentioning they might have How to Win Friends and Influence People, which he needed to read. Ryan said he liked reading but preferred eating, noting Len had filled her bag entirely with books and nothing else. He teased her about eating the Communist Manifesto, to which Len threatened to eat him with a fork and claimed the library wouldn't have become a toxic dump if the communist revolution had succeeded. Ryan countered that it might have become a gulag instead, delighting in teasing her beliefs. Len protested that the concept was right and questioned if it was wrong to want everyone to be equal. Ryan called that naive. Len remained optimistic, insisting that everything had been reset and the world had changed. Ryan argued that human nature had not. Len accused him of being too cynical and asked when their father would return. Ryan replied he didn't know, saying it would be once he ran out of victims. They shared a silent, rare moment of privacy, locking eyes, and Ryan looked at her lips but ultimately hesitated. Len sighed, her expression unreadable, and asked Ryan to help remove the books from the gondola so they could make it a bed. Ryan balked at the idea, pointing out the wood was damaged and could crumble. Len said she always wanted her own ship and mentioned that over 80% of the ocean was unmapped. She dreamed of finding or making a real ship to sail away like explorers of old. Ryan asked if that would be with or without their father. Len didn't answer but stood and began removing books with Ryan's help. After clearing the books, Len examined the gondola's bottom and knocked on a spot, asking if he heard that. Ryan heard nothing. Len explained that this type of boat often had a hidden compartment used to carry messages, money, or drugs, which marauders might not have found because it wasn't common knowledge. She pointed to a wooden plank and told Ryan to remove it, calling it work division and insisting he work while she smiled brightly. Ryan complained but agreed, especially after Len promised he could sleep in the gondola. As Len predicted, the wood was so damaged by time and termites that Ryan removed the planks with his bare hands, revealing a hidden compartment containing a hexagonal metal box with a helix-shaped lock. The teens held their breath at the discovery. Len's eyes widened in shock, asking if it was what she thought. Ryan confirmed it was one of the mythical wonder boxes sent by the alchemist to the first genomes, devices that had triggered the last Easter tragedy and the genome wars. Ryan easily picked the lock, having years of experience breaking into deserted homes. The box opened to reveal a well-preserved letter and 3 syringes filled with swirling liquid, 1 blue, 1 violet, and 1 red, each marked with a multicolored helix symbol. Ryan read the handwritten letter aloud as Len looked over his shoulder. The letter congratulated Mr. Rossi for being selected to participate in a grand sociogenetic experiment and explained that the box contained 3 elixirs granting health benefits and unique powers based on their colors. Green for life, blue for information, violet for space-time, red for energy, orange for matter, yellow for abstract, and white for metapower. The letter advised not to consume more than 1 and warned that many others had received the gift. It promised a new world where mankind's potential was no longer constrained by reality's rules and ended with thanks from the alchemist. Len said sadly that the box's original owner never opened it. Ryan speculated that the man likely died before he could and probably hid the box before the bioweapons hit. Ryan asked if the blue elixir could make someone a genius, explaining that geniuses were slang for genomes with advanced technological abilities like Mekran, who had nearly taken over the world with a robot army before the nuclear devastation of Central Eurasia and Southern Europe. Ryan asked which elixir Len wanted to take. She paled and whispered that they couldn't drink it because their father would sense it in the blood. Ryan agreed but said it might be their only chance to escape him. Len refused, saying she wasn't abandoning their father and believed he would get better. Ryan argued that their father was getting worse, now violent and paranoid, and that he doubted he would heal. He insisted Len knew he was right deep down. Len bit her lip and said he was still her dad and that he would want all the elixirs. Ryan said their father didn't have to know and warned that he would get them all killed. Suddenly, a shrill voice called out from outside, shouting Len's name and asking where she was. Speaking of the devil, Ryan quickly grabbed an elixir in each hand and hid them in his back pockets alongside the letter. Len almost seized the last potion but hesitated too long. Ryan managed to hide the blue and violet elixirs just as Len's mutated father crawled into the room, his body constantly fluctuating and moving like a stringless doll with flailing arms. He left no bloody footprints. Both teens tensed and moved closer to each other. The psycho addressed Ryan as Cesare, commenting that he was taking care of his sister. Ryan knew the name was false and they were not related but said nothing. Len's father was sick, sometimes kind and friendly, but other times he became Bloodstream, a dangerous addict. When Bloodstream noticed the wonderbox and the red elixir, his body solidified and his fingers turned into sharp claws. Overcome by addiction, he lunged at the box, pushing Len aside and causing her to hit a wall of books. Ryan immediately rushed to her side. Bloodstream grabbed the red elixir, smashed the syringe, and absorbed its contents without injecting it. His blood fluctuated wildly before stabilizing. He frantically searched the box for other elixirs and screamed at the teens, demanding to know where the rest were. Ryan protested that there was nothing else. Bloodstream called him a liar and transformed his hand into an axe, threatening that a son shouldn't lie to his father. Len screamed for him to stop. Suddenly, Bloodstream calmed, his hands returning to normal as he shook his head in confusion. The elixir would stabilize his mutations temporarily. He apologized to Len, struggling with his mind. Len said it was okay, looking away with crossed arms. Bloodstream reached toward her but backed down when she flinched. He then looked at Ryan and asked him to smile for Len. Ryan forced a smile, knowing it was false. Bloodstream placed his bloody hand on Ryan's hair like a pet and praised him as a good boy. Neither teen corrected him, recalling that the last time Bloodstream broke from his delusion, he had almost strangled Ryan and would have killed him if Len had not calmed him. Bloodstream only truly listened to Len now, sometimes not even her. Their pattern repeated. They settled temporarily. Bloodstream had violent episodes, locals were wiped out or they fled, and people hunted Len and Ryan when they couldn't kill Bloodstream. They had moved from Campania to Venezia, chasing isolated genomes to drain their elixirs to satisfy Bloodstream's addiction. Bloodstream ordered the kids to pack up, saying the place was driving him crazy and they were going to Aqualand, which Len liked because of the water. Len agreed hesitantly. Bloodstream cheerfully hoped for ice cream before leaving the room. Len looked at Ryan, who immediately hugged her tightly, wondering if he should ever let her go. He still had the elixirs in his pockets. They had to leave. On May 8, 2020, for the 5th time, Ghoul crashed his Plymouth Fury. After climbing down from the car, Ryan admired the vehicle he had rebuilt from ruins in Florence, customized into a technological marvel. The car had been his constant companion, second only to Len, since no one else remembered him from restart to restart. Ryan whispered to the car that he wouldn't let anyone hurt it again and that the bad psycho was gone. Preparing to do something new for this restart, a method to avenge his car's death upon the Metagang. He raised jumper cables and, adopting a German accent, told Ghoul they had ways of making him talk. After delivering a shocked Ghoul to private security, finishing his delivery, and paying off everyone, Ryan considered his next move. Determined to return to the Augusti path without mistakes, Ryan checked into a hotel in the city center rather than the southern district. He met Wyvern, warned her of Ghoul's escape, and received her business card. Vulcan contacted him as usual. Ryan went to the Bakudo, met Zanbato, and received his mission. Before leaving the hotel the next day, he hid a small remote camera in the room, having already booked another place to avoid an assassination attempt but wanting to catch a glimpse of the killer. "I'm bored," Quicksave complained while the Augusti finished loading crates into bathyspheres. The private security had not shown up. "That's good," Zanbato said calmly. "It means things are running smoothly. I prefer boring efficiency over chaotic excitement." "That's what she said," Ryan replied, pulling an old pre-war Samsung phone from his pocket, enhanced to match newer devices. With it, he could observe through his bedroom's camera remotely. The camera showed nothing unusual, but the thermal sensors indicated someone had flown close to the window, peeked inside, and then left. Considering Ryan's room was on the 10th floor, the visitor was definitely a genome. Ryan asked if anyone knew of a flying invisible man or woman around. Ryan questioned whether Geist spied on people by peeping through windows at night. Zanbato explained Geist was bound to one place outside town and couldn't leave it, as his powers activated post-mortem, binding him to his grave. Ryan, under the influence of the power, admitted feeling empty, alone, and directionless, filling the void with trouble and excitement, with boredom as his natural state. Ryan denied both, stating he was on his own side and had no cause, using the others only to find his old friend Len because of loneliness. One of the guards suggested Ryan see a therapist. Ryan replied he had, but he broke the therapist first. He suggested splitting up and offered Zanbato a ride. Zanbato changed plans, insisting Ryan go to his place instead. Ryan joked about dinner first, and Zanbato confirmed that was the plan. asking if Ryan liked pizza and claiming to cook it better than anyone else. When Ryan mentioned his hotel, Zambato insisted he stay at his place for a friendly, warm environment, saying the secret nemesis could wait. Luigi remarked Zambato was like cream, sweet and sticky. Ryan asked if it was vanilla ice cream, and Zambato recommended chocolate for depression. Ryan found the situation strange, being led to a dinner party metaphorically at knife point, as Zambato refused to leave his car until Ryan agreed to come home with him. Zambato's home was a modern two-floor house north of Mount Augustus, in a higher-income area with large houses built on steep hills overlooking poorer districts. The house featured warm brown and white tones, an infinity pool at the hill's edge, and a garage that opened automatically. Ryan parked his Plymouth between a Lexus ES and a heavily customized Harley-Davidson Sportster. He introduced himself as Jamie Cutter and requested no masks inside. Ryan joked about revealing his secret identity, warning that many had gone insane hearing his true name. Jamie laughed and said all he knew was Ryan Romano, as his bosses couldn't find much about him. Ryan protested, claiming he was unforgettable, but Jamie explained there wasn't much known before Ryan started working in costume and causing destruction. Jamie opened the garage door, inviting Ryan inside. The large living area included a kitchen, a sofa with a big plasma screen, and stairs to the upper rooms. Huge picture windows offered a marvelous view of the city, and the decor featured Asian art, including a katana on the wall, a Korean flag on the balcony, and a Buddha statue near the TV. 2 people were present: a dark brown woman drinking a soda near the balcony and an Asian girl slicing tomatoes behind the kitchen counter. Ryan paid them little attention, focusing instead on an enormous rat on the kitchen counter that looked at him curiously. Ryan waved, and the rat raised its tiny forelegs in response. Jamie kissed the girl in the kitchen on the mouth as she set aside her knife and dinner. She was probably his girlfriend. Jamie then introduced a new guest, Ryan, to her. The girl, Hyun Ki-young, nodded politely at Ryan with a friendly smile. She was slim, contrasting with Jamie's muscular build, kept her black hair short, dressed modestly, and wore discreet yet elegant glasses. Ryan immediately recognized her as a recovering addict due to her weight loss and the sore scars on her skin. Ryan greeted her with "Waza," and Ki-young responded with the same tone. Both then shouted "Waza" simultaneously, startling the rat on the counter, which tilted its head. The dark brown-haired woman near the balcony looked at them as if they were mad, while Jamie appeared puzzled. Ki-young reassured Ryan that it was an obscure private joke requiring initiation. Ryan introduced himself politely as Ryan Quicksave Romano, joking about being immortal but asking them not to tell anyone. Jamie remarked that Ryan said that to everyone, to which Ryan replied it was because nobody remembered. Ryan noticed the kitchen rat had brought its entire family. 3 watched a documentary on the TV, another slept on the balcony, and 1 leaped onto Ki-young's shoulder like a Pikachu. They looked clean and pampered rather than pests. Ki-young explained she controlled them somewhat through telepathic connection, increasing their intelligence. Ryan asked if her power was blue or green, and Ki-young replied green, meaning her power affected biology rather than mere rodent telepathy. She identified herself as Chitter, likely expecting Ryan to recognize the name, but he did not. The dark brown-haired woman from the balcony then joined the kitchen, deciding to socialize. She had numerous tattoos on her arms and shoulders, a bird symbol below her right eye, and wore stained glasses. Dressed like a biker girl with a white sleeveless shirt, blue pants, black boots, and a cross pendant, her dark hair was styled in shoulder-length dreadlocks, and she appeared physically fit. She bluntly asked Jamie who Ryan was, calling him a new hobo found on the road. Jamie chastised her, but Ryan proudly replied he preferred the term murderobo, explaining he didn't have a home but loved stealing them. The woman, named Lanka, was unimpressed and offered everyone a cigarette, which none accepted. Ryan deadpanned that his costume was in the garage, making Lanka snort. Jamie praised Ryan for beating up Saren so fast no one saw it, warning Lanka not to push it. Lanka remarked about the need for new muscle due to psychos ambushing her near Rust Town and the reluctance of normies to sell bliss there. Kyung clapped her hands to get everyone's attention and asked if they could discuss business another night, requesting help to set up the gambling table while they prepared pizzas. Jamie asked Ryan if he liked poker, mentioning the entry fee was 100. Ryan joked he didn't like poker but liked winning, which everyone smiled at except Lanka, who took it as a challenge. Jamie explained they were all made men and women working together and shared the flat for practical purposes. He invited Ryan to stay for a few days until their business was done, assuring it would cost nothing and be preferable to a hotel. Lanka added that Jamie owned the place and couldn't help but invite strangers in need, like Ryan. Ryan declined the offer, preferring his privacy. Jamie insisted it was a friendly proposal with no hidden strings and genuinely believed Ryan would gain personally and professionally by joining their big family. Ryan said he was just looking for Len, describing her as having black hair, blue eyes, and being an underdiver. Jamie seemed familiar with the name, and Kyung confirmed Len was involved in the power plant incident earlier that year. Ryan corrected that Len was female, surprising his hosts. Jamie recalled that private security caught Len and Vulcan wanted to break her out for recruitment, but he was unsure if the weapons division followed through. Ryan asked if they worked for Vulcan, and Kyung explained their capo was Mercury, overseeing gambling, logistics, and security, while Vulcan's group controlled the weapon trade. The groups cooperated sometimes but mostly operated independently. Ryan asked why Vulcan sent him to them rather than recruiting him directly. Jamie explained he was one of the Augusti's primary recruiters, trusted by the capos to evaluate potential new recruits initially. Lanka noted that Ryan passing the evaluation meant he was still alive. Jamie promised to introduce Ryan to Vulcan the next day, even if he didn't want to join, which should solve his problem. Until then, Ryan was welcome to live with them and was asked what he thought. Ryan considered the proposal, noting that having many genomes together might discourage the mysterious assassin from bothering him again. Except for Lanka, they seemed like nice people despite their criminal background, and it could be fun. However, Ryan remained wary of joining communities due to his frequent deaths and being forgotten afterward. Only his friendship with Len predated his time manipulation power. He could always leave if he felt too attached. Ryan accepted with a joke about 4 cheese, which the others took as a yes. Jamie laid down the ground rules. No bliss allowed under the roof, no cats or pest control, no cocaine after 10. Everyone cleaned up after themselves. Tinkering was in the garage, and parties required a day's notice. Ryan listened silently, though Jamie clearly did not know him well yet. Later, Ryan drove the group in his Plymouth Fury, a rare occasion transporting more than 1 or 2 people. Jamie wore his power armor in the back. Kyung sat beside him in a green hoodie, and her rats occupied every corner of the car, hiding behind and beneath the seats. Lanka complained all the way at the front, accusing Ryan of cheating and insisting she would have taken her bike if Jamie hadn't insisted they travel together for team building. Ryan teased Lanka for being a sore loser, mentioning that he had left yesterday's poker game a few $100 richer and recalling his old nickname, Lil Granny Destroyer. Lanka insisted she had counted cards and accused Ryan of changing them, claiming she was never wrong. Jamie questioned her accusation, pointing out the irony of her accusing Ryan of cheating while admitting to cheating herself. Ryan openly admitted to cheating, surprising Jamie and Kyung, and suggested that failure was a learning experience. Lanka shrugged, unbothered, and Ryan compared human cheating to mammoths accusing humans of unfair tactics. Jamie sighed at their bickering and proposed trying tabletop games next time. The group parked near Little Maghrib, beside a fortress of stone and steel that had once been a foundry before the war and was now controlled by Vulcan. Ryan observed the heavily armed guards patrolling the area and snipers on the roof, noting that Vulcan's weapon division operated openly but was untouchable, even by private security and Il Migliore. The location was near a hotel Ryan had used in a previous loop, explaining Vulcan's attack on Wyvern for moving close to their headquarters. Ryan expressed disappointment that only he and Zambado wore costumes, while Lanka and Kyung did not even wear masks. Kyung questioned the practicality of masks since private security already had files on them and knew where they lived. Lanka added that advanced armors were scarce and that costumes like capes were impractical. Ryan argued that style was important to elevate them beyond mere animals. But their conversation was interrupted by a newcomer. A man dressed like Rambo, but smaller and without a gun, approached on a bicycle. He had painted his face and dyed his hair white with black spots around his eyes, resembling a panda. The group recognized him but looked embarrassed rather than hostile. The man declared himself the sworn destroyer and prepared to face them as the panda. Ryan questioned the seriousness of his costume and powers, noting the man's claim of only getting laid every 10 years. Lanka mocked the man's vigilante status and powers, and Kyung added a chuckle about his size. The man, mistaking their silence for fear, challenged them again. Jamie told the group to ignore him and proceeded to the armory, followed by Kyung, who glanced pityingly at the man. Even the foundry's guards joked about the newcomer and made no move to stop him. Frustrated, the man transformed into a massive black and white panda-like creature, shedding his clothes and growing claws and fangs. Despite his size, Ryan found his scream more cute than terrifying. Lanka formed a gun with her fingers and fired an orange energy sphere at the panda's nose, paralyzing him instantly. Ryan recognized why they called her sphere. Lanka drew a Beretta 76 and claimed dibs on the panda's corpse. Ryan protested, horrified at the idea of killing a panda, pointing out their extinction and potential legal consequences. Lanka dismissed his concerns, arguing that the panda would be killed by guards later anyway, and that selling his fur would be profitable. Ryan blocked her gun, refusing to allow animal cruelty and warning about PETA's wrath. Lanka, confused about PETA, lowered her gun in annoyance. Ryan pointed out the snake tattoo on her arm, which she had tried to cover, revealing she had been an ex-bandit. She confirmed her past with a band of savages. The guards then allowed Ryan and Lanka inside the foundry's perimeter. She wore a black Greek chiton dress, sandals, a shark tooth necklace, and skull-shaped earrings, exuding style. Ryan felt uneasy around her, noticing Jamie and Kyung's stiffness and Lanka's tension at her presence. He recognized the woman's bodyguard as the same woman who had tried to flirt with him at the Bakudo during a previous chain of events. This time, the bodyguard wore a black uniform and carried an assault rifle. Since this was a new loop, she did not recognize Ryan. The blue-haired woman and her bodyguard passed by Ryan and Lanka on their way to the parking lot, then stopped abruptly when she noticed the courier. The blue-haired woman addressed Ryan with a deep voice, demanding to know his age while her sharp gray eyes examined him intently, like a hungry crocodile lurking beneath the water. Ryan responded with a mock bow, claiming immortality but asking her to keep it secret. She dismissed the claim, expressing vague amusement and hoping to reach his age someday before turning away with her escort. Lanka muttered that this was not a good sign. Ryan asked who the woman was. Jamie, upon regrouping, identified her as Pluto, Augusta's sister and underboss, warning that when she was sent, heads fell. Ryan questioned the name's gender association, and Lanka explained the family's theme naming, noting that Neptune, the third sibling, served as Augustus' consigliere. Jamie clarified Pluto's power. If she wanted someone dead, they simply died without warning, protection, or countermeasures. Kyung added that since enemies were still alive, the power must have limits, though they remained unknown. Lanka asked why Pluto was here. Kyung explained that 5 made men had died under mysterious circumstances recently, and the boss suspected a new vigilante rather than the metatrash, who would have claimed responsibility openly. Jamie said Pluto and the Killer 7 Hit Squad were assigned to handle the situation, with orders to assist them if requested. Ryan noted the mention of explosives and joked about his invisible nemesis. Jamie agreed but emphasized leaving the higher-ups to manage the threat unless it directly challenged them. Before entering the foundry, Jamie instructed Ryan on addressing Vulcan. No jokes about her height and no mention of Wyvern unless she brought it up. Jamie led the group through the foundry, revealing it as a full weapon production facility with metal processing, assembly lines, and guards wearing intimidating armor variants. They passed through searing hot rooms filled with furnaces and automated lines producing guns, bullets, and rockets. Eventually, They reached Vulcan's workshop, a quintessential genius lair cluttered with bulky devices, glowing glass bulbs, and futuristic contraptions. Dominating the space was an enormous set of power armor, nearly 5 meters tall and tank-like in bulk. Equipped with numerous weapons including a massive rocket launcher on its right arm, cannons, and beam weaponry. Multiple eye-shaped cameras covered the machine for all-around vision, and it was plated in gold for show. Vulcan awaited them, drawing plans on a large table. Despite her codename, she was a young woman, possibly 18 or 19, petite at about 1.60 meters, with olive skin, sharp black eyes, and dark hair tied into a bun with a pencil. She dressed casually in a black shirt, dirted pants, and unlaced shoes. When she looked at Ryan, her gaze was fierce. Ryan commented that he expected someone taller, like Wyvern. The room tensed as everyone stared at him as if he were insane, except Vulcan, who gave him a murderous glare. She threatened to blow off his legs, likening him to a landmine and provoking a comparison to Napoleon. Jamie intervened, urging respect and apologizing for Ryan's ignorance. Vulcan explained that Ryan was her personal target and that anyone who spoke disrespectfully would suffer. Lanka hissed at Ryan about survival instincts, and Ryan replied that immortality made such instincts unnecessary. He noticed the enormous reactor on the back of the power armor and asked if it was a miniaturized fusion reactor. Vulcan showed surprise but remained angry. Ryan revealed he had worked on one before, though not as advanced, and admired the suit's plasma beam weaponry. Vulcan offered a live demonstration as the suit moved autonomously, causing the others to step back and Jamie to prepare to summon an energy sword. She threatened to destroy only his legs, acknowledging his brains. Vulcan observed that despite Ryan's proximity to death, his vital signs remained unchanged, and he showed no fear. Ryan wondered how she knew this and suspected a telepathic link to the suit's sensors. Her anger shifted to curiosity, likely assuming he had an advantage. Vulcan asked if Ryan was a genius, noting his possession of advanced tech. Ryan admitted being a sort of genius due to his extensive tinkering and handed her the A-bomb from his trench coat. Vulcan agreed enthusiastically, expressing her geeky passion for explosions and explaining that the Cold War never escalated because everyone possessed A-bombs, whose absolute destructive power maintained peace. Ryan overheard Lanka whisper to Jamie about there being 2 of them now, with Jamie grinding his teeth uneasily, though the tension in the group eased slightly. Kyung asked with a smirk about Mekran, noting that bombs had not helped against him. Vulcan dismissed Mekran as an unforeseen variable like the alchemist, then waved the A-bomb under Ryan's nose, warning him not to say Wyvern again or she would shove the bomb down his throat. She spared his life this time due to his skills but cautioned him not to push his luck, joking that Killville was a place she had visited often. She suggested that if he joined her division, she might reconsider, admitting she had many workers but few real engineers worth their salt and promising to tame his attitude. Despite her friendlier tone, Vulcan's suit weapons remained trained on Ryan. Jamie defended his own division, Mercury's, suggesting Ryan might do well there. Vulcan retorted that she had looked him up first and that Mercury should get out more if he wanted to find good men. Ryan stated he was not seeking long-term employment but was looking for Len, described as having black hair, blue eyes, and Marxist-Leninist beliefs. Vulcan smirked, calling Len an underdiver, and questioned how she would benefit from introducing Ryan to her subcontractor if he was not staying long-term. When Ryan asked the price for the introduction, Vulcan laughed and sat on her workshop table, denying she was a crook who worked for money. Ryan joked that he had only his body left to sell, making Kyung chuckle before regaining her composure. Vulcan admitted uncertainty whether he was ballsy or insane, but said she needed fresh warm bodies to throw at a problem. Jamie asked if she meant the metagang and if she wanted them to take them down. Vulcan dismissed Jamie, stating her crew would handle the meta problem under orders from the big boss, instructing them to protect shipments while her team dealt with Rust Town. She revealed her plan involved fighting the law. Ryan expressed delight at the idea, joking about tax evasion as an excitingly dangerous mission, mentioning Al Capone. Lanka pointed out that nobody paid taxes. Vulcan sneered, explaining that the private security and Il Migli or had been overly eager lately, testing them because they believed the meta had weakened their organization. She insisted they must remind those forces not to underestimate the Augusti. Jamie asked if she wanted them to attack Dynami's operations, and Lanka frowned at the inclusion of us. Vulcan nodded, revealing that Dynamis was filming a new Il Miglior movie and she wanted the studio trashed as a message. Jamie began to mention the newest movie under production, and Vulcan finished the sentence with a vengeful glint in her eyes. Wyvern's Flight 2. Ryan asked if she wanted her personal vendetta crispy or extra crispy, signaling their readiness for business as usual.